In 1998, the world mocked a woman named Grace Miller. They called her desperate, foolish, even insane, because Grace, a single white woman from Ohio, made a decision that defied everything people thought they knew about family. She adopted 8 abandoned black babies, all at once. The world called it madness. But 25 years later, the same world now calls it a miracle. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are? And who do you love most in this world? Because this story is about love, the kind that never gives up. It was winter. Snow clung to the hospital windows, and the faint cry of newborns echoed down the hall. Grace was volunteering that day, folding baby blankets, refilling formula bottles, when she overheard 2 nurses whispering. "They're back again," one said softly. 8 of them, same mother. She disappeared after giving birth. Grace froze. 8? She asked. The nurse nodded sadly. All boys. Premature. No one's claimed them. When Grace peeked through the nursery glass, she saw them. Tiny brown faces, fists the size of marbles, all fighting to breathe. Something inside her shifted. Most people would have said, walk away. But Grace didn't. She visited every day after work, humming lullabies, holding their tiny hands. And then one night, she whispered the words that would change her life forever. If no one wants them, I do. The adoption agency thought she was joking. A single woman taking in 8 infants? Impossible. But Grace wasn't joking. She sold her car, emptied her savings, and turned her small 2-bedroom home into a nursery. When the judge asked, "Why would you take on such a burden?" Grace answered simply, "Because they deserve someone to love them before the world teaches them to hate themselves." The story made headlines overnight. Woman adopts 8 black babies, hero or hoax? And just like that, the hate poured in. Her church turned their backs. Neighbors crossed the street when she passed. Even her parents stopped answering her calls. "You're embarrassing us." Her mother spat over the phone. "What will people think?" Grace hung up quietly. She looked around at the cribs lined in her living room. 8 tiny souls breathing softly, and whispered, "Let them think what they want. We'll be okay." The next few years were brutal. Diapers, milk, rent, everything cost more than she had. Grace worked 3 jobs: teacher by day, cleaner by night, and baker on weekends. Her hands cracked from soap and cold water. Her eyes burned from sleepless nights. Some days she went without food so the babies wouldn't. Other days, she borrowed clothes from neighbors for them to wear. But through every hardship, laughter filled that small house. 8 boys, mischievous, loud, beautiful, chasing each other through the halls, painting on the walls, singing off-key in the bathtub. Grace never scolded them for the mess. She only smiled. "Mess means life," she said. "And life means hope." But hope couldn't hide the stares. At the grocery store, strangers whispered, "Why are those kids with her?" Some even asked cruelly, "Are they stolen?" Grace would straighten her back and reply, "They're mine, every one of them." When the boys grew older, the questions got harder. "Mom, why do people stare? Why don't we look like you?" Grace sat them down one evening, her voice trembling but gentle. "Because love doesn't always match the mirror," she said. "You are the most beautiful part of me, even if the world can't see it yet." The boys nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting her completely. Still, the cruelty outside their door grew sharper. A teacher once pulled Grace aside after school. "You're doing your best, but maybe they'd be better with a family that understands their background." Grace bit her lip until it bled. She didn't say a word. She just took her son's hands and walked out. That night, she cried quietly in the kitchen, afraid the boys might hear. But one of them did. Little Jordan, only 7, crawled into her lap and whispered, "You don't have to cry, Mama. You're our family." And just like that, her strength came back. When the boys were in high school, Grace lost her job. The bills stacked up like mountains. The electricity was cut off for a week. One evening, an officer came to deliver a foreclosure notice. Grace collapsed on the porch, the paper fluttering in her hands. But before she could break down, the boys, now teenagers, came together. They washed cars, sold cookies, and did odd jobs until they saved enough to keep their home. For the first time, the world saw something different. Not a white woman raising black boys, but a family holding each other up. A local journalist heard their story and published it with the headline, "The Family That Refused to Break." Within days, donations and letters poured in from all over the country. People who once judged Grace now thanked her. She didn't ask for fame. She only asked for peace. Years passed. Each of her sons grew into extraordinary men. Jordan became a surgeon. Eli became a lawyer. Marcus joined the army. Noah started a foundation for underprivileged kids. Every one of them carried Grace's name like a badge of honor. At their graduation ceremonies, Grace sat quietly in the crowd, gray hair tucked under a simple hat, eyes filled with tears. No one knew who she was, until one day, during a televised award event, Jordan stood on stage and said, "I dedicate this to my mother, a woman who taught us that color doesn't define love." When the world turned its back, she opened her arms. When people laughed, she worked. When we cried, she held us. And because of her, we stand here today. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. And for the first time, Grace smiled without fear. 25 years after that cold winter day, the family gathered again. This time, not in a small house, but in a grand hall filled with light. The 8 brothers had arranged a surprise for her. A public celebration of her life. The banner above the stage read, "From orphans to legacy, because one woman said yes." When Grace entered, everyone stood. Her silver hair glowed under the lights. Her steps were slow, but steady. The same nurse who had first shown her the babies decades ago was there too, wiping tears. Each son took the microphone, sharing what she meant to them. "Mom," said Eli, "you gave us more than food and shelter. You gave us dignity." "Mom," said Marcus, "you didn't just raise us. You saved us." Grace listened, her trembling hands clutching a single photograph. The first picture she ever took with her boys, all bundled in blankets. "I only did what love told me to do," she whispered. "The miracle wasn't me. It was us." 2 years later, Grace's health began to fail. She spent her final days surrounded by laughter and the sound of grandchildren playing in her garden. One quiet evening, Jordan sat beside her bed. "You did it, Mom," he whispered. "You proved them all wrong." Grace smiled weakly. "I never wanted to prove them wrong," she said softly. "I just wanted to prove love right." And with that, she closed her eyes, her hand still wrapped around his. At her funeral, hundreds filled the church. Not just family. Strangers who had read her story, neighbors who once judged her, and children who now called her their hero. Her sons stood before the crowd, their voices trembling but proud. "She didn't just raise 8 black boys," Jordan said. "She raised a new generation that knows what love looks like." The audience rose to their feet in applause. An applause for a woman who defied color, class, and fear, and built a family out of faith. And so, the world that once mocked her name now remembers her as Grace Miller, the mother of 8 miracles. Do you think Grace deserves to be remembered? Tell us in the comments below. Hit like if her story touched you, and subscribe for more real stories of hope, love, and courage. Because sometimes the bravest families aren't born, they're chosen.